Hello. This is the third lesson in the second Fetter about doubt. And the lesson today is going to be a lot. Um, the last four lessons in this Fetter are all going to be um, demanding and difficult to hear. And you're going to feel that you get a lot of information that you don't want, and you don't want to look at it, and you don't want to work with it. And take your time. There's no need to rush through it. I know that it is the second Fetter, and for a lot of you, especially if you're further along in the Fetter work, you would feel that you're going back working with doubt. And please don't look at it like that. Please don't be like that towards yourself. Meet the needs that you have, and if you have a need about these things that we're going to talk about in this lesson and yeah, in the last of the four lessons of doubt, then just take all the time you need. Speak with your guys, speak with your group, make sure that you have good friends around you that are supportive, because we're going to look at a lot of shadow stuff. We're going to look at a lot of underlying beliefs about yourself and about the world, and there is going to come a lot of things up. None of it is dangerous or in any way should come with any kind of warning, because it's already there. Obviously, if you need to speak with a therapist, then do that. I assume that you're responsible adult. So the lesson that we're going to have today, we're going to talk about the two different divisions that we have within us. So even though you have looked through self and you are not identifying anymore, and you're aware that there's no separate self anywhere, there is just a thought, and you used to identify with the thought and thinking that the thought was important and you needed to act on the thought that you have, then now you know that a thought is just a sensory experience. It's like something you see, you don't need to react on that. Something you hear, you don't need to react to that. Smell, taste, no need to react. You can hear whatever sound or smell, and you don't need to do anything about it. And it's the same with the thought. It's the thought is where you have the being on one side, and then you have the selfing on the other side. And the selfing is where all the identification takes place. So you know that about the thought, that a thought can happen, you don't need to act on it. What we're going to talk about in the second Fetter, which you probably already have figured out by the last two lessons, is that feelings and emotions are just as seductive as thoughts. And you don't need to act on a feeling either. A feeling just needs to be felt. So it's about feeling what is happening in the body. You need to get from your head into your body. You cannot use your head for anything but looking good. So just, from the head into the body, and then feel how it feels in the body. And now I would like to say something that might be taken a little bit provocative, but please bear with me. You have a sensation. That is like something you hear, see, smell, taste. That is a sensation. And it's the same with feelings. They start out as a sensation. As soon as you make a sensation into a feeling, a shift is happening. So the sensation is what we in Buddhism call the Vedana, where you have a pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. That is a Vedana. A sensation is in that category, where you have a sensation about something. As soon as you put a label on it, it becomes a feeling. When you put a label on a sensation and it becomes a feeling, then you have involved thought in it. That means that now there's a sensation added with a thought, and then you have a feeling. If that is being continued, so you continue doing over and over and over again, then it starts to become part of your personality. And that is when a feeling is moving into being an emotion. And an emotion is very, very deep. It's almost, part of our genetics, in the sense that you can measure on your hormone levels or on your biochemistry. It can be measured what emotions you have. And the different releases that we have biochemically and neurochemically are shaping our personality, which means that any emotion you have is always connected with either a release or not a release. So it's either something that is there or something that is missing that is creating an emotion. So when we talk about emotions, it's really deep, and it's in the bracket where it has shaped your personality into who you are today. So it's also about looking into really, really old stuff. So what we're talking about today is about the split that we have with the ego on one side and the authentic on the other side, and then there's a gap between the two. You have probably heard about before the gap when we talk about the gap, and in all the different fetters there is a gap. There's always a gap. That's why I'm using the antidotes to really emphasize where the gap is, which direction it is that you're looking. But we're going to talk more about that today. In the next lesson, we're going to talk about that bubble of reality that we create around us. We have like that bubble around us where you perceive your reality. This is me. It's still about selfing. This is me. I am here. And whatever you perceive here, you project into the world around you. So that is about the bubble of reality. And in that bubble, it's like coated with mirrors on the inside. So everything you say or everything you perceive or anything you hear other people are saying, it's never about them. It's never about out there. It's always in here. It's always about you. It can never be about anyone else. That is in the next lesson. The lesson after that, the fifth lesson, is going to be about the division that we have in us on the further level of it, where you either become very submissive in everything you do, and that is what I call you become the chameleon, where you completely shape your personality into be accommodating, very altruistic, very, regarding yourself as secondary compared to everyone else, or you become the bully, which is very egotistical and very much, looking at me, myself, and I. So that is like an extension of what we're talking about today. And in the last lesson that we're going to have in the doubt curriculum is about the emotional indicators. And the emotional indicators, I have talked a little bit about it in the other two lessons that you already have had. And I'm also going to talk a little bit about it today. I'm going to circle back to it all the time. And the emotional indicators is that deep seated feeling that you have. That is the emotions that I talked about before. That deep seated feeling that you can have of fear, anger, guilt, and shame. Every time you get a sensation, that turns into a feeling that is connected with a thought, and you start to have that underlying, you have like a very deep seated feeling about something being in a certain way. For example, if you have a theme about shame, then you have a very deep-seated feeling about you being shameful. There's something about you that is deeply shameful. And that is the starting point for everything. So that is becoming your underlying belief that you are not okay as you are. You need to change. You should be different. You shouldn't look like you look. You shouldn't say what you say. You shouldn't think what you think. You should be different. Everyone else has a different value than you. You are subhuman compared to everyone else. That is the underlying belief. And you can probably hear when I say it like that that is a super toxic starting point. For you to have that starting point for every single conversation you start, and for every single interaction that you have, for every single thought that you have, obviously you're never going to resolve anything anywhere. And you might have gone through the fetters and have the feeling that there's still this, I cannot let it go. They said something and immediately I reacted, and I know it's not about me. I know there's no me. I know I'm not selfing at all in any way, and I just create space for it. But god dang it, it happens all the time. That is about this fetter. This is the fetter that you need to look at about that. And the reason why I work so much with this in the doubt fetter and not further along in the fourth fetter that is about desire, all the things we want, or ill will, all the things we don't want, is that by sorting this out now, by realizing these things now, is going to make the fourth and the fifth fetter so much easier for you. Because then we can, when we get to that, focus on all the things you want them to be different about, all the things you want the outer world, to accommodate or to be different in any way. But we have sorted out the underlying belief that you have, or at least you have become aware of what the underlying belief is, which means that the fourth and the fifth fetter is going to be so much easier for you. And that's why we work with it here in the doubt. So that is the rest of the doubt curriculum. So what we're going to talk about today is the ego and the authentic. And the reason why I would like to really emphasize the difference between the ego and the authentic, it is that it's like both are opposites. They're opposites to one another. And the more you become aware of when you are one thing or when you are the other thing, the more clear you will be about the middle way. And the middle way is where you have the gap. And to be completely clear in you, when you are in the ego and when you are in the authentic, it's going to make it so much easier, no matter which fetter you're working with or which part of awakening you're working with. It's going to make it so much easier for you to snap out of it, snap out of the selfing and get back into the gap where you have that stillness. But let's start at the end. Let's start talking about the ego. So when I talk about the ego and the authentic, I like to use this picture as an example, because you can't be both at the same time. If you look at this picture, you can't see the rabbit and the dog at the same time. You can only see one of them at a time. And it's the same with the ego and the authentic. You can't be both at the same time. So becoming aware of when you are in the ego and when you are in the authentic is going to make everything so much clearer for you. So we have this illusion of reality. We have this idea of an opinion is being made and that opinion is truth. Obviously, like we talked about in the last fetter, an opinion is just an opinion. It's just a thought. There's never an opinion that is correct. So putting yourself in a space where there is no one holds the truth. No one is more right than anyone else. No opinion is more correct than anything else. Then you're beginning to get the flavor of what we're talking about today. So you can basically see it like you have the ego on one side and you have the authentic on the other side. And those two are opposites. And I'm going to take one fetter at a time. And then we're going to look at how you are in the ego and how you are in the authentic in the different fetters. So if we start by the first fetter, obviously you have the identification that is clearly the ego. You identify, you have the selfing, this is me, my, I. That is clearly the ego. You can also hear it in the way that you formulate yourself. Every time you start a sentence with I, or you say me, or you say my, or you talk about yourself, clearly that is about selfing. It's about the ego. You believe whatever you say to be true, and you can hear on the words that you're choosing that you are selfing right now. You're giving an opinion about your world view of how you view the world, but it is just an opinion. It's just a thought, and you're just expressing what the thought is thinking. It's not a truth. It's not a truth at all. So becoming aware that every time you say I, me, my, mine, you're talking about selfing. The opposite of that, what is on the other side, is when you have identification, the opposite of that is obviously the non-self, where you know that there is no specific me, there's no I anywhere, there's no agent anywhere, that the selfing is just a thought, and it's a it's a thought. The thinker is a thought too, so it's like a thought thinking about itself and creating opinions about itself, seeing itself reflected, validating itself through its own reflections all the time. That's the selfing. So realizing that and realizing the non-self that we did in the last Fetter is the first step of the way to realizing, okay, there's something more than this. There's something more than this. But seeing the non-self is still a concept. It's still a concept. So it's still not the right thing. You can't say right about anything, but you're still not there. You're still in the balance where it's either or. It's on opposite sides. The opposite to the selfing is the being. It's what I talked about, that you have the eyes are seeing, the ears are hearing, the nose is smelling, the mouth is tasting, the body is feeling, and then you have the mind, which is being. That is like the pure state of it. But as soon as you add a thought into that and you start to believe the thought, then you have selfing. So the opposite to the selfing is the being. As I said, that you can hear on how you speak. You can listen to your words. You can listen to what you say, and then you can hear if you're selfing. Because when you start a sentence with "I believe," I think we should," isn't it better if we, because I would like that. All that is selfing. The opposite to that is where you have the focus on all of us, all of us as a unity, all of us together. So it's an us and a we, the way that you're thinking. I also want to say here that where it starts to be toxic, I'm going to talk about that more when we talk about the chameleon and the bully. Because what the chameleon does here is not seeing an us, but seeing a you, which means that you have the ego on one side, and then you have the altruistic, the toxic, authentic on the other side, the altruistic on the other side. The egotistical and altruistic is just opposites, and that is where I have a focus on you being more happy than I am happy, and that is just as toxic as being a bully. But I'm going to talk about that when we have the lesson about the chameleon and the bully. The next one is really, really important, because when you're present and aware, when you are in the being, then you have a feeling from the inside out. And that means that you have the very, very clear message from the body about what is going on, what is happening. So the first part of a sensation, that is where you have the Vedana. That is where it can be pleasant, unpleasant, or it can be neutral. Then the next thing that happened on the inside, from the inside out, is that you have a sensation and you add a label to that sensation, and that gives you a feeling. You cannot have a feeling without a thought. There's always a thought connected to a feeling. That is what is differentiating it between a sensation and a feeling. So the feeling is always connected with a thought. And as soon as we add a thought to anything, a cascade is starting, because we tend to react to the thought from now on and not on the feeling. So if you have a feeling, let's say that you have a feeling of you might be nauseated, let's say. So you have a bodily sensation that is unpleasant. And then you have a feeling, you add a thought to it, and then you know, okay, it's from around the solar plexus area, I'm nauseated. That is what is happening. I feel nauseated. That is the feeling that I have. The next thing you do, if you add more to it, is that you then start to react to the thought connected with the feeling. So I'm nauseated because you spoke to me the way that you did. That makes me nauseated. What will happen now is that instead of staying here where the need is for me to stay here with a body that is nauseated right now, with an unpleasant sensation right now. That is where I'm supposed to stay. But what the ego will do now is jump on the thought that says that I'm nauseated because of what you said. So you need to stop saying what you're saying. You need to stop doing what you're doing because you are making me nauseated. That is all ego. That's all ego. I have completely left left the part of the conversation that needs the attention. What needs the attention and the awareness is being in a body that is nauseated. This has nothing to do with you. Nothing to do with you at all. My job is not there. My job is here. So I need to look at, can I be in a body that is nauseated? If you have been threatening towards me, or you have, done something that makes me, feel scared, can I be in a body that feels scared? Can I be in a body that feels uncertain? It might also be that you have said something that makes me feel inadequate. Can I be in a body that feels inadequate? In that comparison that I go into where I feel less than you, can I be in a body where I feel inadequate, where I don't feel good enough, where I feel that I should be better than who or what I actually am? Can I be in a body where this is reality right now? And that is where the attention should stay. That is where I'm supposed to be. I'm not supposed to be anywhere else. So that is the inside out. The outside in is what I said, that you are the reason for me feeling like I'm feeling. So that is the outside in. It comes from outside and in. But it's also where you believe that how people see you has any bearing on who you are. You know? If I have a need for you to like me, then I'm in the outside in. Because my value as a person is dependent on what you think about me. If I have a need about being perfect, then you need to, it's from the outside in, you need to think that I'm perfect, that I'm doing things perfectly. Otherwise, I can't feel that I'm okay as I am. So the inner feeling that we have, the inner sensation that we have in ourselves, the inner emotions that we have, the inner picture or thought that we have about ourselves is dependent on the outside, and that is the outside in. What is also connected with that is the recognition. When you're in the ego, you have a huge need for other people to recognize you, to acknowledge you, to approve of you. Again, it's from the outside in. So your value is dependent on how other people think of you and what other people say about you, partly to you, but also about you to other people. And in that, there's no freedom. There's no freedom for you to be who you are, because your value is tied up with how you perceive other people perceiving you. But also, there's no freedom for other people. You need to set people free not to like you. It's okay that people don't like you. There's we're like, what, 9 billion people? It's completely fine that some people don't like you. They like somebody else. And of the 9 billion, I absolutely assure you, there will be somebody that likes you. So the ones that are in your sphere, the ones that you're, meeting daily, nobody's obligated to like you in any way, to approve of you in any way. When you're in the authentic, that is when you have the authenticity, that you view the world from the inside out, how it feels, and you're authentic to how it feels. You're authentic to how you are in the world, and how you perceive the world, and you set people free to be who they are. If they like you or do not like you, it's not relevant. And I don't mean the talk to the hand, it's not that one, because that is very, very engaging in what other people they do. It's really and honestly, with full of compassion, you're completely free not to like me. I have no need for you to like me at all. If you like me, it's fine. If you don't like me, it's fine. So, and the last one that I want to talk about in the first fetter is that when you're in the ego, you are never holding yourself accountable for anything. It's always about other stuff. So the starting point is in the selfing. The starting point is in in an identification that is happening with the selfing. But the selfing is always viewing itself to be right. Everyone else are wrong, I'm right. Which means that when I do something that is not mm, that great, then I refuse to be held accountable. I refuse to take responsibility for that. Because if you had done things differently, if you had only heard what I wanted to say, then this wouldn't have been an issue at all. And that is the ego, where there's that unaccountability, where in the authentic, you acknowledge. And that means that whatever is happening, the only thing you do is just acknowledge that it's there. Whatever you're feeling, you acknowledge that it's there. You don't have to do anything about it. If somebody says something to you and you get that icky feeling in you, you don't need to do anything. Just acknowledge that the feeling is there. You don't need to change anything. They don't need to stop talking. You don't need to feel any different. You don't need to go to the fridge and binge. You don't need to flick on scroll on Netflix or scroll on Facebook. You don't need any of those diversions at all. You can just be in that space where you create lots of love and unconditional acceptance to what is, and lots of compassion, and just acknowledge, this is my reality right now. This is how it feels to be me right now, and it's so icky, and I do not want it. Do you remember the lesson that I did when I talked about that it's like you have a house, that all the feelings and emotions that you have in you is like different rooms in a big house. It's a bit the same thing. That it's that something comes up, and instead of just shutting the door into the room, you allow it to be there. It's completely fine. It's allowed to be there. You acknowledge that it's here, and you just create space for it. You don't need to do anything about it. You don't need to make it go away. You don't need to love it. You don't need to do anything. The only thing you do is just acknowledge, this is how it is right now. This is how it is right now. It's super, super complicated, super difficult. I do not like it. This is how it is. And then you just acknowledge it and leave it. You don't need to do anything else. Just leave it right there. It's completely fine. When we move to the second fetter and look at the ego and the authentic, it's obviously building on the same premise that you have the two different ones. You have one on one side and another thing on the other side. And the first thing that comes up is acceptance. And you're gonna hear me say this over and over and over. If it's not already been drilled into your mind, then really, really, really know that a lot of issues in your life, a lot of doubt in your life can be dissolved with you having unconditional acceptance to what is. And that means that whatever is, you accept that it's there. If it's something that you do not want and you can't accept it being there, then have acceptance to not accepting it. So it's just creating that space for whatever is there. It's completely fine. It does not need to change. The doubt that I feel in me is completely fine. I'm accepting that I'm so full of doubt. I know that the underlying feeling is about shame, guilt, anger, fear. It's something about that. I have an underlying belief that is something about that. I don't really know what it's about. I'm not really sure I want to know what it's about, but I'm just, this is how it is. I'm completely accepting this is how it is, and I'm not doing anything about it. And by creating that space, that unconditional acceptance to whatever is, a lot of it is going to dissolve itself. Because it's just like when you have pain in the body. One thing is to have pain in the body. Pain is pain. It is as it is. We're going to talk about that more when we come to the fourth and the fifth, where it's about ill will, all the things we don't want, and desire, all the things we do want. I'm going to circle back to pain when we get to that. But it's about that having a pain is pain. Pain is just, something that happens. And it's not really what gives us the suffering. The suffering is everything we add on to it. It's the thought about, oh my goodness, how long is this going to be? Oh, now I can't sleep, so I can't go to work tomorrow. Am I going to be tired? It's all that, added onto it that makes pain so much more difficult. And it's the same with doubt. It's the same with the emotional indicator, which is fear, anger, guilt, and shame. It's the same with that. That having that on its own, I feel super, super shameful, or I feel so guilty, or I'm so, so fearful, or so angry and annoyed. Accepting that, creating unconditional acceptance to that alone is gonna dissolve a lot of it, because you're allowing what already is. And it's not like you're opening up for an avalanche of fear, let's say, or guilt. You're not opening up to anything, it's already there. You're just not looking in that direction. And it's like having a headlight on, it's completely darkness around you, 360 degrees darkness. And then you have a headlight on. Whatever the headlight is looking at is what is, becoming a lit, something you can see. But everything else is still lying in darkness. So the only thing you do with unconditional acceptance is just pointing your headlight in that direction. Okay, this is what it's about. I know now this is what it's about. I'm not doing anything about it. I'm just accepting this is how it is. But the ego do not want things to be as they are. The ego always wants more, higher, faster, So the ego has that foundational feeling of I am not, I should be. That is like the foundational mentality, which means that what is here right now is not okay. I want something else, This feeling of shame that I have, I do not want to feel shameful. I do not want to feel shameful. Now I'm going to find out how I can avoid feeling shameful, either by manipulating you or bullying you into doing what I want you to do so I don't feel shameful. Then I don't need to work with it myself. You are the one with the problem. You need to work with it so I don't have to look at my shame. Or I completely just refuse, that there's anything to look at. I do not want this. I do not want to feel shame or guilt or fear or anger. I don't want to feel any of those. So now I'm going to divert my attention with lots of different things. And what we normally do, what the ego normally does, is to look at the, for example, let's say that I have a feeling of shame. That is like the underlying belief, the starting toxic starting point that I have for everything. The feeling of shame is so, so raw that we don't want that. So we start to put labels on it, saying that I have low self-worth, I have low self-esteem, I have body dysmorphia, I have all of those different things. And those are the things that the ego wants to work with, which means that I have low self-worth, which means that, if only I lose weight, if only I become enlightened, if only and then we do that. Then we work on that, do an exercise regime, do a diet regime, do all the different things, remodeling at home, all the different things that we do, because we do not want to look at the real underlying belief, which is about shame. So the ego pretends to do a lot, taking courses, going to therapy, doing all of these different things to really get to the root of the low self-worth that I have, to the low self-esteem that I have. My boundaries are so, so bad now. I'm really going to work with the boundaries. It's just aversions. It's just aversions. It's no different than scrolling on Facebook or flicking on Netflix. And that is what the ego does. The ego is super, super impatient, and it does not want what is. It wants something else. Because with the unconditional acceptance, there's a lot of space and a lot of time given, where the ego is super impatient. I want it now. I want it now. I haven't got time, to wander around here in the doubt. Second Fetter, seriously? I was supposed to be in the sixth Fetter or the eighth Fetter. I was supposed to be further along. I can't stroll around here and doubt the second Fetter. Super, super impatient. Super impatient. Instead of seeing that, well, what's the rush? Why are you in a hurry? What exactly is it that you want to achieve that can possibly be any better than what already is? Yeah, super, super delusional. Another thing that the ego does in the second fetter is noticing all the mistakes, all the things you do wrong. Really, really, tally up all the things that should be different, that you should be different, that you really should have understood this by now. Really, really looking into all the mistakes that is made. What the authentic does is looking at exactly the same situation, but seeing the possibilities, seeing the openings. And I think this is one of the things that I have been quoted for the most when I talk about it's the recording and the lesson where I talk about that there's no preference to anything, that every situation is useful. So whether you're having a warm bath or you're having a root canal, it's the same. It's the same. There can't be a preference towards one or the other, because as soon as you lock yourself into a preference, you are removing yourself from all the gifts, all the gold nuggets that is in the other, which you are not preferring. So by not preferring, by not having a preference, you put yourself in the space where anything is possible. There is learning opportunities in every single experience you have. You cannot limit yourself to believing that you know what the best learning opportunities would be, because has it been that? Truly, if you really look at your life, has it been like that? Has your life been like smooth sailing? Oh, so many insights. You're popping in whenever I wanted to. Has it really? I doubt it. I doubt it. Because life is not like that. Life is not like that. You learn the most in all the situations that you do not want. And you learn the most because you do not want it. Because that resistance that you have towards something is expanding your very, very narrow view of you and the world and everyone around you. So that ability to see every single situation as useful, there's something useful in everything, and seeing whatever you deem about yourself that is not okay. For example, I'm not good at social interactions, like you and me meeting on the street and hello, how are you, and all of that. I'm not good at that at all. I could see myself as limiting. I could notice all the things that should be different about me being autistic, and shouldn't, I shouldn't react like that when I meet people. I shouldn't talk like that. Instead, I can see all the things that are the abilities in exactly the same thing. So instead of looking at all the things that I do not want, I can look at all the things that are actually enabling me in ways, in social interactions, that makes me not wanting to change what is. Does it make sense? So it's the difference between being in the ego, wanting things to be different, noticing mistakes, and being in the authentic, where you are seeing the abilities. You simply see all the things that just open themselves up without any kind of limitation. And another one that is tied into that is the next one. The ego is always trying to fix, always trying, because remember, the foundation for the ego is that I am not a should be, which means that I can always improve. I can always be better. The situation can always be better. I can always want more. I can always, improve. So the ego is always looking at what needs to be fixed, where the authentic is standing in that space where you're just creating space to what is. So whatever you feel needs to be changed about you, I need to be fixed, I need to be different. Instead of doing anything, then leave it and look at it and just be with it. Create space to what is, what you used to think needed to be fixed, like I have low self-worth. that needs to be fixed. Are you sure about that? Are you sure that that needs to be fixed? Or do you need to stop what you're doing, make contact with your body? Can you be in a body where you have low self-worth? Can you be in a body where you have low self-esteem? Can you be in a body where this is your reality? And instead of wanting to fix it, and change what is, can you be in a body where this is what is? Can you create space for what is right now, and then just look at it from there? And it's also where this part about doubt, if you look at all the 10 fetters that I have made, I have antidotes for all of them, and you can see that they are exactly what I'm talking about here. You have the ego on one side, and then you have the authentic on the other side. And it's just for the reason that I have the antidotes, like doubt, and the antidote to that is calm. It's just for you to see the two opposites, because it's where you will find the middle way between them. You will not find anything in the doubt, and you will not find anything in the calm in itself. It's not a solution to choose either. But it gives you a direction to where you're going. So when you're in doubt, it gives you a direction to where you're going with the doubt, finding into the calm. And then we have one that I love to talk about. It's the emotional indicators, and it's part of this fetter. It's going to be the last lesson in this fetter that I'm talking about, the emotional indicators. And the emotional indicators are fear, anger, guilt, and shame. Those are, whenever you get a feeling, an underlying feeling, and I mean read deep, 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 deep down. You can take every single emotion that you have and kind of like, what do you call that? Untangle it, you know, and finding into what is the underlying belief in that. And that is always either fear, anger, guilt, or shame. And that you have on one side, that is the ego. And the ego believes in that. The ego believes, I have fear, I have an anxiety, I have depression, I'm so shameful, I have no boundaries, I have no self-worth, I have body dysmorphia, I have all of those things. First of all, you can hear it with the I, that there's a lot of ego happening, a lot of selfing happening, but you can also hear it with all the labels that are being put on it, because that is not actually descriptive of what it is. If I say that I have an anxiety, then you get an idea of what it is that I have. But what that label is, an anxiety, what that label is not descriptive of what is actually happening in my body. It is just a label that I have put on with my thought that I have put on, so you can get an idea of what it is that I have. But the idea that you get is based on you. So it's not even descriptive of what is actually happening. So whatever label you put on things, whatever the ego believes that you have or you are with fear, anger, guilt, and shame, what you need to do is get into the body yes, body no. And that is like the other part of it. So going from here in the head, where you're thinking about things, and then you go into the body. And in the body, you will always have a very, very clear body yes, body no about what you should do. And I know that right now you're going like, what are you on about? I can talk myself into a chocolate cake. That is most definitely a body no in many ways, but my goodness, I can make that into a body yes. And I know, when we come to the third fetter, where we talk about the harmful routines, we're going to work a lot with the body yes, body no. We're going to work a lot with the wants and the needs. But for now, I just want you to be aware that when you have an emotional indicator, you have fear, anger, guilt, and shame, you have that a contact with the underlying belief, then know that when you can put a label on it and describing what it is that you feel, there's a thought connected to it. If you detach that thought, you're going into the body. And in your body, you can feel what it is that is actually happening. Because if you say that I take shame again. If you say that I have shame, the feeling of shame, how it feels to be in a body full of shame, is not connected at all to the label shame. You experience the same with um, um, when you are really, really nervous, you know, going on stage, making a speech in front of a large audience, and you have like clammy hands and you're shaking and your heart is pounding and you're dry in your mouth and you get like those nauseated feelings in your solar plexus, in your tummy. Um, the label you attach to that is, I'm nervous about going on the podium. I'm nervous about having a speech in front of a lot of people. But if you stay in the body, if you stay in the body and you feel how it is it to be in a body that has clammy hands, is dry in the mouth, is shaking, is perspiring a lot, has that nauseated feeling. How is it to be in a body that feels like that? Then you can feel that, hang on, this feeling is actually very, very similar to being in love. So are you sure that you're nervous about getting on the stage, or are you just in love? You know what I mean? I know that obviously if you're standing in front of a podium and you're about to speak to, 1,000 people, then the probability of you being in love in that moment is probably not there. It's probably that you're nervous about going on the stage. But it's just getting that awareness about it. That there's so many things that we identify with the label. I am nervous. Well, this feeling you had when you were 13, the first time that, your sweetheart looked at you in a certain way, then you had exactly the same situation. You had exactly the same feelings, exactly the same bodily reaction. So don't limit yourself to believe what the thought is telling you. We're back to that part of the selfing. Don't believe what the thoughts are telling you. It's just thoughts. It's just thoughts. Stay in the body. Can I be in a body that has clammy hands? Yes, I can. I can. Can I be in a body that is super perspiring? Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can. Dry mouth? Yep. I can have a glass of water. Yeah. I can be in a body that feels like that. Yes. I can be in a body that is nauseated. Yeah. I can. I can. I can be in a body that is like that. And by that, you create space to what is, and you're no longer running away from it. You allow what already is to be there. And that is healing and soothing in itself. So, in the next fetter, in the third fetter, we are going more into this, but I just want to mention it now, that the ego is always looking into improving because it has that idea of I am not, I should be. So, it's always looking to improve. And therefore, it's always also looking for a purpose in everything. It's looking to do things. How can I do this? How can I have that? Is like the standard reply whenever there's an issue, whenever you feel something in your body. And people then, for example, when I have had groups and people, they get in touch with an emotion and they're really, really sad and they're sitting and crying, or they're really, really fearful or really, really angry, and they're sitting and they're contacting the body and feeling the emotion. The first thing they do is ask, so what do I do about it? That you're completely jolting yourself out of the body, out of where it is, where it's actually happening, into the ego, into the thought. So what can I do? What can I do? I want to do to get rid of this feeling. I don't want to feel like this. I don't want to have this in me. I want it out, 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 out. So what can I do? What can I do? Breathe. You're not supposed to do anything. You're not supposed to do anything. It's about presence. It's about being aware. Remember when I talked about the joy in experiencing? There you go. So when you're sitting and you have clammy hands, you're standing on the way to the podium, or you have clammy hands, you're sitting being nauseated, sitting crying, being really, really sad, whatever feeling or emotion is there, the only thing you have to do is have presence. Just be there. Look into the joy of experiencing. Can you find the joy of experiencing right now, feeling this sad, feeling this angry, feeling this whatever you're feeling? Can you tap into that? Can you tap into that joy of experiencing? And I know it's a tall ask, when you're sitting and crying, to look into the joy of experiencing of crying. But can you? Can you create that space? Can you be in a body that is crying? We're not trying to avoid it. You're not trying to divert it. Anything. You allow yourself to be with what is, Can you see the joy of experiencing in that? So if we move on to the fourth and the fifth fetter, and we look only at the ego and the authentic, then you will very, very easily find, and you probably know that person that is talking all the time. They never ever listen. They talk, 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 talk. When we come to the fourth and the fifth fetter, that is about desire and ill will, I'm going to talk about the different kind of walls that we build up. And one of the walls is what I call a noise wall. It's the wall where, where people, they put up a wall and they avoid any kind of emotional interaction with other people with noise. With noise. They talk, 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 talk all the time. And they never ever listen. The authentic is the part that listens. And when you start to listen, it is a huge gift, because whatever you think or whatever you hear other people say, there are so many clues in that. And I am gonna teach you all of them. There's so many clues. So we talked a little bit about it just before, when I say that whenever somebody is saying I, me, my in a sentence, they're selfing. They're selfing. And there's so many clues in with the verbal indicators. That is blaming, shaming, complaining, and explaining. Again, is something we're talking about in the fourth and the fifth. But there's so many clues. There's so many words that we're using that are describing exactly how we view it. So even when I'm pointing fingers at you and saying that you are and you should and all of that, when you really listen, when you really get over yourself and you listen, you get out of the ego and you go into the authentic. So you just listen. That is creating the gap. I'm going to talk more about that in a second. It's going to create a gap into where there is no preference towards anything. And you can hear where the other person is coming from. And that creates so much compassion in you, because you know it's not about you. It's not about you. No matter what I say about you, it can never ever be about you. It can only ever be about me. Again, I'm going to talk about that in the next lesson, where I talk about the bubble of reality. I am going to circle back to this. So if you're interested in that, that's a lesson to hear more about. But just for now, see when you're talking, notice, why am I talking right now? Am I talking to divert from something? Am I talking because I am selfing, I'm in my ego, and I want, the conversation or the other person to go in a certain direction? Or am I free and are they free to be who they are? Can I just be in the space where I'm creating, calm and space, and just listen? And also look into, when you're in conversation with other people and you start to notice these dynamics where some people are talking a lot, other people are not saying anything. Do you see that is the same thing? That over talking or under talking is the same thing? That there's something in between that is the middle way? Do you see that? And now this one is a big one. This is about expectations, and I talked about that in the first fetter. I talked about expectations, and I talked about that every expectation you have is tying you into victimhood, because you expect something to be in a certain way when it's not going to be like that, because things never happen the way you expect them to do. They are, just happening the way that they are. And the expectation that we have tied into something being in a certain way is putting us in a victim position where I want something to happen. It didn't happen, poor me, So expectations is clearly and always ego. Always, always, always ego. Whenever you have expectations about anything happening in a certain way, you have put yourself in a position where you literally believe that you can decide an outcome. You think that just because you expect something to happen in a certain way, that is how it's going to happen. That is how it's going to happen, beautiful wedding day, 500 white doves being released, and it's going to be absolutely beautiful. Then it was a frosty night and all the pigeons are dead. Anything can happen. They can have diarrhea, wrong diet, and then diarrhea over. Yeah, you get the picture. So it's just the all the expectations that you have about something, that it should, you know, things should happen in a certain way. Um, that is logging you into a belief where you believe that you actually have any control about anything, and you don't. Absolutely not. You can't. There's nothing. There's nothing you can control ever. So the authentic is the opposite. And the authentic has that adaptability, knowing that, okay, on the wedding day, I would like to have the 500 white doves released. Oh, there was a frosty night. We haven't got any doves. Okay. Take it from there. That's the adaptability. So it's no matter what happens, you're not phased by it. No matter what happens, you move with that. Whatever is happening, it's okay. It's okay because it's happening. You cannot have an opinion against reality. You cannot argue with reality. Whatever is happening in reality is happening. It is happening. So you have that adaptability. You have that impartiality to what is happening. That whether something is happening that way or that way, it's completely fine. It's completely fine. And it's also part of that being okay with other people who other people are, and being okay with the value that other people they have, with the opinions that other people they have. You're completely impartial. It's fine. Other people are completely entitled to believe and think whatever they want. It's got nothing to do with you. Nothing to do with you at all. That is the authentic. Ooh, this one is a big one. This one is about entertainment and drama, and the ego loves drama. If you just sit down right now, close your eyes, and just, have silence for a moment, very, very quickly, the ego is going to start to drum up a lot of drama. Oh, I can't sit like this. My leg hurts. What am I going to do afterwards? What do I want to eat for dinner? Why is she snoring like that? How is she breathing like that? And oh, I don't like that perfume. All of that, all of that. And it keeps going on and on and on and on and on. You can have an argument with yourself on a desert island with your ego. Nobody else needs to be there. And you just sitting down, closing your eyes, and just being with your mind, you will see what I'm talking about. And that ego entertainment, that need for entertainment, that need for drama, you have every single reality show there. You have all the comment sections on Facebook. You have all the scrolling. You have all the mind-numbing programs in the television. All that entertainment is made as a diversion. And what it is diverting from is the stillness and the simplicity. And stillness and simplicity are two things that are so, 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 so important to allow in your life. All the things that I'm talking about here, I got a message from someone that had binge watched the entire first Fetter curriculum, completely on binge watch all of them. I think it's like 7 hours or something like that. You need stillness after that. You need to find your footing. You need the quiet. Just like everything else, just like when you have an inhalation, you can't keep inhaling. You also need to have the equilibrium, the quietness, and then the exhalation, followed by the exhalation. And that wave needs to be in everything. So as much as you are scrolling, and as much as you are, flicking, as much as you are, on your phone all the time, or as much as you're creating drama in your mind, then she said, and I'm going to say, and then he said, and I'm going to say, all that drama, my goodness, it's just ego. It's selfing all of it, all of it. You need stillness and you need simplicity. Two things I want to say. The first thing is the simplicity. Whenever something starts to get complicated, then you should leave it. I know that if there's something that you really, really want, and you really, really want it to be sorted now, that's ego. If it's not sorted right away, then leave it and pick it up at a later point. Because things need to be simple. Things needs to be easy. If things are not easy and you're turning forceful about it, then your ego and everything is gonna end up in a knot. It's not gonna happen. It's not gonna work out the way you want it. Because you cannot ever be forceful about anything ever. That was the one thing. The other thing is a really good exercise that I used to give my groups when I had the groups in Denmark, to find out how much television and internet and the Facebook and Insta and all of that, how much that is actually affecting you and how much it is actually stealing. I have this exercise. So let's say there's a great movie that you really want to watch. You make the popcorn, whatever you usually do. You sit down in the sofa, you take your blanket on, you're ready with the popcorn, you turn the television on, and then you turn the television off, put the popcorn aside, and then you sit for the next same duration as the movie would be, an hour and a half, and you're just sitting in silence. Or you, for example, want to go on Facebook, scroll on Facebook and see what is happening. You know by experience that you're going to use 2 hours on Facebook. You say it's only 15 minutes, but we know it's 2 hours, easy peasy. So you turn Facebook on your computer and you turn your computer off and you just sit there in silence. Just in silence. That is what you're trading, That stillness and that simplicity is what you're trading for all the drama. And the ego loves the drama. The ego loves the drama. Start to notice how you are creating drama in your mind. What are you actually doing to create drama? How are your divisive thoughts? What thoughts do you have about other people that are really not very nice? They're very, very telling about you. They're not saying anything about them. We're circling back to that in the next lesson. But just start to become aware exactly how you are divisive in your thoughts. I talked about it a little bit before, and it's that forceful striving. It's that when you want something to happen in a certain way, it's tied in with the simplicity. So something is in a certain way. You do not want it to be like that. You want it completely different. That is forceful striving. That is you forcefully wanting something into it. And I can recommend you to go back to the first Fetter, where I talk about ego death, because that is the problem of it. The ego is afraid of its own mortality, of its own dissolvement. The antidote, or the authentic side of it, is the just being. It's the is, am, are. So whenever you're striving for something and you want something to be different, then go into the opposite. Go into the opposite, where you have a focus on what is right now. It's also tied into contentment. And when we come to the fourth and the fifth, the antidote to the fourth and the fifth is contentment. It's about leaving all of it. Just let it be. Let it be. And just be content with what is right now. What is happening right now? You know what you want to be different right now. But what is happening right now that you're actually quite content with? What were you not aware of you were actually quite content with? And another thing I just want to circle into when we're talking about contentment, you can always hear that you're locked into the fourth and the fifth by what I call the verbal indicators. And just like we have the emotional indicators that are fear, anger, guilt, and shame, the verbal indicators is blaming, shaming, complaining, and explaining. And when we come to the fourth and the fifth, I am going to talk much more about that. I promise you. You will be so diligently listening to your own thoughts, to your own words, but also to what other people they say. And it will put you in a position where you can go from the verbal indicators, where you hear blaming, shaming, complaining, and explaining happening, and then pull yourself into contentment, because that is the opposite. You have the ego, you have the authentic, so that is the opposite of it, and the opposite is contentment. You're complaining about Janice at the office. Janice, she is so dismissive, she is so rude. Okay, Go into the contentment right now. You just had a verbal indicator. You were complaining, right? The next lesson is going to teach you that you're not talking about Janice at all. You're talking about you being rude and you being dismissive. So go into the space where you have contentment right now, and that brings you the calm so you can go into the gap and then move on. Another thing that is really big when it comes to the fourth and the fifth and the way that the ego reacts is being defensive. So whenever somebody is saying something, it would be nice if everybody had brought, a cake for tea. Immediately you hear that as selfing. The ego is there right away. Drama, love it. So the ego is right up there right away. You hear it as a personal critique of you not bringing a cake. So therefore you go in and defend yourself. You defend, I didn't have time. I didn't know I was supposed to bring a cake. I didn't know, and all of that. That is defending. As you can hear, it's also one of the verbal indicators because it's explaining. So it is tied into that as well. But as soon as you start to defend yourself in any way, then find into the opposite, which is being peaceful. It's that, again, that calm in you. Find into that contentment that is. And in there you have the opposite. The next thing that is relevant when we talk about the ego and the authentic, and we talk about the fourth and the fifth fetter, it's the feeling of lack and comparison. I'm going to take both of them at the same time. The ego always compare with others. And obviously, when I'm comparing, I'm always losing. You are always looking so much better than I do. You always have so much more than I do. So when I go into a comparison, I will always lose. And that is the whole point of it. It is the whole point of it. The authentic part of the comparison. So when you start to compare yourself with anything or anyone, then you are always on the losing end and you are selfing. So what you do is you go into the authentic and then you have compassion with what is, which means that you might feel they are so much more enlightened than I am. And then instead of being, you find out, oh my goodness, right now, I was just comparing. Can I be in a body where I feel that I'm not good enough? We're back to shame. Can I be in a body where I feel that I'm not good enough, where I'm comparing and I'm obviously losing in this comparison? Can I be in a body where that is happening? And by that, you're creating compassion. You're creating compassion to what is, creating space to what is. And exactly that with when you are in the doubt, that you keep opening up for the unconditional acceptance, for the love and the compassion. It is healing on so many different levels. So even though you might not be aware when you're in the moment that, oh my goodness, I'm comparing right now to Janice, you might not be aware that that is what is happening right now. But you can always, whenever you get that icky feeling in you can always connect with the unconditional acceptance and love and compassion. And the same is happening when you meet somebody that are very, very resentful. You have resentment, and resentment is always tied into entitlement, obviously. And it is ego, obviously. The opposite of that is love. So whenever you meet somebody that is super resentful, then do you see how much love is needed in that? You do not need to believe what they're talking about or what they're saying, but you can just, connect with the sensation of love in you and connect with that to dissolve. And when you're feeling resentment in you, then connect with the opposite of it, which is love. The last thing I would like to talk about, it's that craving and desire. So it's very specifically about the fourth fetter, which is craving and desire. It's all the things you really, really want. When the ego is locked into that, then you have that sensation, I am not, I should be, I want more of that. I want more of that. You might have, have had, a little bite of the apple and now you really, really want more. You want more. The way that you snap out of that and come into the authentic part of it, it's where you connect with your body. Or as you probably have seen, every single solution for when you're in the ego to go into the authentic, it is about making contact with the body. So making a contact with your body. And then you connect with the sensory experiences that you have and find enjoyment in that. So it's very much about the contentment still, but it's very much about noticing what is happening in your body that is giving you enjoyment, because there's nothing that your sensory experiences, the signals that your sensory experiences are giving you, um, are always enjoyable. There's always enjoyable sensory experiences, even when it's something, which you don't like. If there's a sound you don't like, or a smell you don't like, there's still something enjoyable about it. What the ego loves to do is to latch on to the unpleasant Vedana, into the unpleasant things, all the things that the ego don't want, because then it has something to work towards in wanting to become that. I'm not, I should be. It's still about that. But every single sensory experience you have, whether it's seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, feeling, um, every single sensory experience you have is enjoyable. And you're supposed to enjoy your body. You're supposed to enjoy how it is to be in a body and to have a body and to connect with your body. You're supposed to enjoy all of it. So whenever you are locked into a future thing being different, with the desire and the craving and what you want something from the future, you can connect with the body right now and feel what is enjoyable in my body right now. So close your eyes, feel what is enjoyable in your body right now. What part of your body is really enjoyable to be a part of and to have? Is it in your tummy? Is it enjoyable in your tummy? Is it enjoyable in your legs? So make contact with your body and find out all the enjoyable sensory experiences. And it's also where, by doing that, um, starting to be curious about what part of the sensory experiences that are enjoyable also makes you more in tuned to what you actually feel in your body, and it's not locking you into an avoidance anymore. It's more making you aware of all the things that are really nice and really enjoyable to experience with the body. So if we look at it like this, then you have the ego on one side, where all the egotistical things are, and then you have the authentic on the other side, where all the altruistic things are. As you can see, it's like there is like the ego is like a dead end road. Whenever you get into laziness, or frustration, or impatience, or worry, or apathy, or anxiousness, or fear, anger, guilt, or shame, or whatever you're getting into, that is like a dead end road. There's no way, there's no going from there. You can't go anywhere when you're there. So the only thing you can do is find the opposite. And that's easy. The opposite of what you're experiencing is always easy to find. If you can't find the opposite, then make contact with your body, because we're going in the same direction. So you have the ego, you have the opposite, which is what I call the authentic. And between those two, you have the gap. And the gap is where there is no opinion, there's no wish for anything to be in any way, there's just space. You get into the gap with connecting with your body. So whenever you have a feeling about something, or that ickiness about something, we're working a lot with this when we get to the fourth and the fifth, but you can use it already now. So the gap is when you are locked in the ego, you have a response, you have a reaction to something, you have a feeling about something, fear, anger, guilt, or shame, something which you don't want to feel. That is locked into the ego. You have the opposite. That is the antidote, the opposite to it. And that is where you have the authentic. But both of those are just on each side of the road, Those are just opposite. And that is like, the yin yang of it. In between that, you have the gap. And in the gap, Rumi has he has a quote where he talks about between right doing and wrong doing, there is a space, I meet you there. And that is exactly the space I'm talking about. It's that space where there's no right doing or wrong doing. So it's not the ego in the wrongdoing or the authentic in the right doing. It's beyond that. And in that is the gap. And you can very, very quickly, if you don't want to think about ego, authentic, and all of that, very, very quickly, you can get into the gap by connecting with your body. Your body is always, always very, very connected with the gap. And that we are going back into the body yes and the body no. Because when you're in your body, you can very, very clearly feel if this is too reactive or this is too submissive. Because you can't be either. You need to be in the space where there are space and compassion to yourself and space and compassion to everyone else. So there's not the division between an ego and an authentic. That division is not there anymore. It's the space where there's no reaction and there's no opinion and there's no preferences. It just is. So it's that pure awareness of what is. And there you have the gap. And that is where you dissolve all the different hooks that you have into things being in a certain way. So if I should sum all of this up, I said it before that the only feeling is contentment, and the only action is kindness. Everything else is ego. And I hope this long rant was useful for you to look into when you are locked in either. So when you are locked into the ego and you are locked into that dead end road where there's no way out of it. You feel resentment, you feel impatient, looking at the world from the outside in, you are comparing, you have resentments, all of those things. Whenever those come up, I hope that now you have the tool for you to, snap out of it. First of all, create space in your body. Can I be in a body that are full of resentment? Can I be in a body that are viewing myself from the outside in? Can I be in a body that is selfing? Can I be in a body that has fear, anger, guilt, and shame? Can I be in a body that is blaming, complaining, and shaming? Can I be in a body where that is? And then you create the space, with the unconditional acceptance to what is. You create the compassion towards you where you are right now, and you fill yourself up with so much love that what is completely fine. You don't need to change, you don't need to do anything. Like I said, the foundational feeling of doubt is always an underlying belief, and the entire ego list could be that underlying belief. It could be that underlying belief. And underneath that, you have the emotional indicator with the fear, anger, guilt, and shame. Can you be in a body where that is present? Can you be in a body where nothing needs to happen? Where everything is completely fine? Is that possible? Thank you.